Russia has reportedly invited Donald Trump's incoming administration to attend upcoming Syria peace talks in Kazakhstan. The current U.S. administration said on Friday that it had not been asked to take part. But State Department spokesman Mark Toner said Trump's administration would seriously consider the offer. New Syrian peace negotiations were announced last December after a nationwide ceasefire was secured by Russia and Turkey.
We will look for a discussion with the new American president. I don't want to get ahead of that, but I'm very much convinced that we, as partners, benefit more if we act together than if everyone solves problems for themselves. And that is a constant, fundamental attitude on my part.
Merkel and Trump will have an opportunity to meet at the G7 summit in Italy in May. And then in July, Germany will host this year's G20 summit. Merkel recalled the G20's role in the international response to the financial crisis based on common rules for regulating financial markets. She said the world's problems need to be solved through cooperation rather than by each country individually.
A symbolic farewell. On one of his last duties as the US Secretary of State, John Kerry arrived in Vietnam on Friday to reaffirm America's diplomatic commitments. Almost 50 years after he fought in the Vietnam War, Kerry's tenure in government has been during a time when America and Vietnam relations have never been better.
I thought it was interesting that he chose Vietnam for his last Asia speech, since he's got about a week left. And I think it kind of shows how Vietnam holds a special place in his heart as a Vietnam War veteran. The U.S. sees itself making a lot of progress here. It feels encouraged. So it feels more political will to invest in this part of the region.
Developing ties with Vietnam was seen as fundamental to the Obama administration in increasing America's presence in Southeast Asia. But with Donald Trump soon to be sworn in as US president, there's set to be a very different approach to the economic agreements which had been fundamental in linking the two countries.
Vietnam is actively seeking to forge global trade ties, and with the future of the Trans-Pacific Partnership looking increasingly uncertain, this could involve a pivot away from America and towards other potential partners.
This week also saw Vietnam's Communist Party leader Nguyen Phu Trong in Beijing to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. With many countries considering the China-backed Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership as an alternative to TPP, there has been speculation Vietnam may start looking to build closer economic ties with China. However, some political analysts believe that before this can happen, the two nations will first have to find an agreement on a number of geopolitical and security issues.
The history between Vietnam and China goes back a long way. The two countries share a lot of areas where their economies interact. This includes issues of fisheries. This includes issues of energy exploration in the South China Sea. There are areas of cooperation to be had, but these must overcome whatever political, domestic reasons for there to be obstruction to seeking gains from this sort of cooperation.
With RCEP negotiations ongoing and John Kerry's successor hinting towards a hardline stance on China, trade and security look set to remain as two defining issues in the Asia-Pacific region. Callum Stewart, CGTN, Ho Chi Minh City.
Jamie Metzl joins us now live. He's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, a former staff member for the National Security Council in the Clinton administration, joining us now from a geopolitical conference in Sea Island, Georgia. Thanks so much for being with us. The one China policy seems like a bedrock diplomatic nicety, while the U.S. and China have this enormous relationship that has financial, economic, security dimensions. Why is this nicety so important?
Well, it's not just a nicety. It's the foundation of U.S. relations with China. In 1972, in the early 70s, everybody knows about Secretary Kissinger's secret visit to Beijing. And then President Nixon visited, and what was being negotiated was who would represent China. And at that time, at the time of normalization in 1979, Taiwan lost its seat at the United Nations, and Beijing took that seat. So it's the foundation of relations between the United States and China, and it's very, very important to Beijing and critically important. They would call it a core interest. And so if this is being put back on the table, that's really a shot across the bow, and the Chinese predictably are taking it very seriously.
What would the U.S. gain from putting it back on the table? I mean, is it just a bargaining chip, or is there some concrete benefit that would accrue to Washington?
Well, presumably, President-elect Trump thinks that it will enhance U.S. Bargaining position to say that everything is up for grabs. But the question is this something that's so core to the Chinese and far more important to them than it is for us, that the benefit of potentially increasing the room for negotiation is far outweighed by antagonizing China? And that very much looks to be the case here, because the United States and China have a very complex interdependent relationship. And there are so many different issues where we need to work together. If we want to put all of our chips in this struggle over Taiwan, we can, but China, at the end of the day, cares about Taiwan probably more than the United States does, and that's going to create a lot of problems.
What would China do? I mean, what's the risk to the U.S.?
Well, China has said that they're even willing to go to war to maintain the connectivity between China and Taiwan. In the 90s, when there was a question about China putting undue influence over Taiwan, the United States put a carrier battle group in the area of Taiwan, and it was a strong message to China. But since then, China has been building up its military power in order to counter exactly that type of scenario. So if there is going to be an escalation around Taiwan, the question is, will the United States have the escalation dominance that we had in the 90s that forced China to back down, or will we be tested by China's more than 20 years of preparation for exactly this kind of conflict? And again, if Taiwan isn't the core of U.S. policy towards China, it seems to me it would make much more sense to think strategically about the entirety of the relationship and then think about the hierarchy of issues that we, the United States, would like to promote and would like to address. And Taiwan probably would not be at the top of that list.
Chinese President Xi Jinping left Beijing on Sunday for a state visit to Switzerland, marking his first state visit of the year and also his first trip to the country as head of state. President Xi's visit starts in Zurich and ends in Geneva on Wednesday. During his 4-day stay in the country, President Xi will attend the 2017 World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos on Tuesday and visit offices of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the International Olympic Committee on Wednesday. Ahead of his state visit, the Chinese president wrote an article in a Swiss daily newspaper highlighting the importance of the Swiss-Chinese relationship and putting forward a 4-point proposal to boost bilateral ties. He also called for joint efforts to tackle the rise of protectionism.
Weather experts forecast heavy smog will darken the skies over northern China over the next 4 to 5 days. Poor air conditions are expected to persist through January 18th. The most severe days of smog will fall on Tuesday and Wednesday. Forecasters say people can expect bluer skies by the start of the weekend. The Ministry of Environmental Protection has informed China's northern provinces to conduct air quality tests and forecast the results to the public.
A senior Russian Air Force commander has announced the deployment of more S-400 Triumph missile systems to Crimea, but kept mum on when exactly the surface-to-air missile systems would be deployed. On Saturday, 8 mobile air defense missile systems deployed in Crimea were put on combat duty near the city of Feodosia. This comes after U.S. President Barack Obama announced the 1-year extension of sanctions against Russia for its purported annexation of Crimea and its use of force in Ukraine.
We have, of course, a cameraman following the whole visit in order to get all the images from this visit, and we are going to report about the official part, what they say, the meetings, the handshakes, the things people are going to say on the Chinese and on the Swiss side. And then it also gives us the opportunity to broadcast other stories about China.
China has been not only performing at the domestic level, lifting millions and millions of people out of poverty, but also now becoming a big innovator in technology, in solutions from urbanization to infrastructure to, again, high-end technologies, and then with respect to policies.
The foremost creative force for shaping global economics. The World Economic Forum annual meeting is right on its way to accomplish its task of improving the world. The theme this year is responsive and responsible leadership. And to fulfill that calling, around 3,000 leaders and experts from more than 100 countries will be participating.
Responsive and responsible leadership. What does it mean? It means that as a leader, you have to be responsive. You have to listen. You have to interact with those people who have entrusted you with leadership.
There are 5 major challenges and issues for the forum to tackle. The changes brought by the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the creation of a better global governance system, the formation of an enhanced identity, market capitalism reform, and the restoration of global economic growth. The organizer of the forum is hoping to shape the world into a much healthier and hopeful one. And for the first time, a Chinese president will take part in the annual gathering of global leaders.
I foresee that President Xi will show how China will assume in global affairs a responsive and responsible leadership.
With Brexit, the rise of far-right wing in Europe, and widespread trade protectionism, China is now shouldering its responsibility by joining this unparalleled global effort in co-creation and collaboration. The UK's exit from the European Union has thrown the rest of the bloc into uncertainty. Meanwhile, US President-elect Donald Trump is holding a protectionist view in trade policy. The downward spiral of the global economy is fueled by anti-establishment and populist sentiments in both Europe and the US. And China's role in shaping global governance and driving economic progress is high on the agenda.
So we have a number of sessions on China specifically, but we also have a huge range of sessions that look at global issues with a China dimension to them and bringing the voices of China, either represented by business or government, into the global dialogue. In terms of the expectations of the president that we're delighted will be kicking off our annual meeting, it really is about showcasing the presidency in the context of responsive and responsible leadership.
More than ever, global leaders need to share insight on how to best navigate the future, as divisions erode their confidence at the national, regional, and global level. 喜家 CGTN, Davos, Switzerland.
I was invited here by both transition teams, Obama's transition team and Trump's transition team, and it was really a really cool meeting in the beginning. We talked a lot about golf and things like that, and people we knew and people in common, and then we got down to the crux of it. He's introduced me to Ben Carson, who's now the new head of housing for urban development, and we're going to team up and see if we can bring about some positive change in the inner cities, which I felt was my only agenda, and he agreed, and he wants to do something. And he realizes that he needs some allies in that department, and he seemed really sincere about it. I mean, Chicago being one. Chicago is definitely one. Another one they want to start with as a target is Detroit. Ben Carson expressed that, because quite naturally he's from Detroit. I want to do some things with all of the major inner cities to see if we can bring about some change and help some of these young people out.
Pepper is a humanoid robot.
Hi, how are you?
The programmers here at Zorabots in Belgium teach their robots to operate as receptionists and carers and companions, among other things. But what if robots like Pepper get so smart through artificial intelligence they could commit a crime?
We're producing software for robots, and this is more key because we make the robots do things, so we must be really careful what the robots can and cannot do.
The European Parliament wants a clear set of EU laws to decide who's to blame if a robot is used to commit a crime, or commits one accidentally, either the manufacturer, the operator, or even perhaps the robot itself. The European Parliament's proposals aren't only covering humanoid robots like Zora here, are they?
No, they're not. Check.
There's also driverless cars, drones, medical robots, and robots used in industry. And as the technology expands, new uses are springing up all the time. Lawmakers also have concerns about the amount of data robots will have access to. And with many more robots set to enter people's homes, they're worried the machines could be used to spy on people. There are also fears about job losses as robots take over positions from people.
But it is clear that this has to be transparent and clear to the customer, because otherwise these robots will never, there will be no trust. And trust is what we need.
This proposal is just the first step in putting together European legislation, which could include a rule to ensure all robots have a kill switch to shut them off if something goes wrong. And the EU might set up a special agency to deal with just robotics law. Robots like Pepper and Zora could end up being given special legal status as an electronic person. Jack Parrick, CGTN, Brussels.
Police officers get shot and killed. We have many of them that are African American that are shot and killed in the line of duty. This has no place in the halls of Washington. It's an embarrassment.
I think it's a legitimate concern for people in the Congressional Black Caucus to have artistic expression of the African American angst that was present about that issue, and I think that this art may reflect it.
The Fuzhou Giant Panda Research and Communication Center is getting ready to celebrate when Basi turns 37. A very special birthday surprise is on the way.
At the birthday party, a global certification company will present a certificate to Basi, saying he's the world's oldest living panda.
37 years old for a panda is truly extraordinary. The average lifespan is 12 years. 15 years ago, Basi had cataract surgery. Breeders say they have to take better care of her considering her current condition.
Now she's generally in good shape. However, at such an old age, the panda is suffering from high blood pressure and vascular sclerosis. Last year, she had bleeding 3 times. After emergency treatment, her condition became stable and she could eat a basin of food.
Breeders also noted that the bamboo leaves for the old Basi are also different from those for other pandas.
The bamboo leaves for her are different from those for other pandas. Basi like tender leaves, which are picked from high mountains. We must ensure the daily supply of such leaves.
Insiders say 100 lucky people who are the same age as Basi will be invited to celebrate with the panda. Jun Chao, CGTN.
It's a great moment for me. It was important to reach that kind of milestone.
So you've had a phenomenally successful career, so many accolades achieved, but of course the Stanley Cup is one thing that you haven't got to yet. How important is it for you to get to the Stanley Cup?
Well, obviously for everybody who played NHL dreams to win the Stanley Cup, so my dream is well to be one of them and raise the cup in Washington and bring it home to Moscow to celebrate with my friends and my parents.
What would you say has been the secret of your success? How do you think you've been so good for all these years, Alex?
I think I stay healthy most of the time, and it's just off the play hockey, and it's give me passion and give me energy.
You're such a massive star in the NHL and in the sport of hockey, but when you look at the other sports around the world, which athletes inspire you? Who do you look up to?
Of course, I like to see when how play Messi, like how Jordan was playing, and it's the best players in different sports. I like to look at them and learn from them.
We don't do politics on this show, but of course you are a Russian living in Washington, D.C. at a time when there's a lot of accusations being thrown around. How does that impact you? How does it affect you?
I'm good with that. I have a good relationship with the Russians and with Americans, so I'm neutral.
That's very sensible. The fans don't treat you any differently?
No, they've been great. They love me and I love them.
Now, China's aircraft carrier, the Liaoning, and its fleet returned to home port in Qingdao in East China's Shandong province on Friday afternoon. It has completed a 20-day actual combat training in the Bohai Sea, the Yellow Sea, and the East China Sea, and the South China Sea. All the training and missions were conducted according to schedule. Carrier-borne J-15 jet fighters carried out carrier-based takeoff and landing, air battle tactics, and refueling for each other. According to the commander of the Airborne Air Force Base, Dai Mingmeng, the training has helped lift the officers' and soldiers' combat capabilities. Well, he says it's deepened the integration of ship and aircraft, optimized the process of command and support. It also explored new ways for the integration, systemization, and actual combat training.
Immigrants' rights advocates and progressive activists from all around the country joined here today at this historic black church in D.C. to hold what they called a day of unity and resistance at this immigrants' rights rally. Here's what one of the organizers of today's event had to say to me about it.
This is a group that's coming together from New York, North Carolina, California, New Mexico. So immigrants from across the country are coming here to D.C. This is also part of a larger movement that we're doing today. 70 cities.
70?
Yes, 70 cities are participating in some way or another. They're either doing marches, rallies, press conferences throughout the country, and this is all under the banner of hashtag Here to Stay. And we're here to stay, and we're ready to say, no, we're not going to get pushed around as immigrants. We are a group of immigrants that contribute to this economy, and we shouldn't be pushed out. And if you kicked out every undocumented person, you would have an economic recession in this country.
So that economic argument was part of the message here, but the key word today has been resistance. There is a lot of fear in the immigrant community, especially among the undocumented. Organizers and attendees here tell me fear of the hardline stances that President-elect Trump ran on, his hardline immigration proposals. They're concerned about what he's going to do and just how many of those proposals he's going to be able to carry out. But part of the message here was that people said that even though there's fear, even though we're afraid, we've got to set that fear aside and come together, be ready to push back against efforts to separate families and to deport people's loved ones. Here's more of what Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen had to say about all of this.
We are not going to allow Donald Trump to bury the Statue of Liberty. We're not going to let him tear it down. We are a nation for all peoples, regardless of religion, regardless of background, regardless of who you love. We are here for everybody.
So you heard it there from Chris Van Hollen, a message of resistance. The folks here are putting the incoming administration on notice that they are going to push back against any efforts to separate families.
Welcome to the new season of Celebrity Apprentice.
Donald Trump, who created The Celebrity Apprentice, he came out and he tweeted that the show's ratings weren't as good as when he was on. What were you guys all thinking when he tweeted that?
Well, I don't follow him, so this is the first time I'm hearing about it. But I mean, personally for me, I think we killed it. Everyone just enjoyed the show, so ratings or not, it was a good experience for me.
Do you think that someone who's about to be the president of the United States should be tweeting about Celebrity Apprentice ratings?
I mean, I could just say that for our next president, he should worry about what's going on in our country and not a television show. So I think it's a little weird. So I just hope eventually, once he gets into office, that he focuses on what he should be focusing on and not reality TV.
Like, someone should take away his Twitter, maybe?
I mean, I'm surprised they haven't yet. Like, for real. Don't you have a team? I mean, it's kind of guilty pleasure, but then you think, oh my God, he's actually our president.
If he tweeted you or tweeted at you, would you respond?
Depends what he tweets.
If it wasn't very nice.
No, I'd block him.
The global economy has been going through uncertainties in recent years, even going back towards protectionism. But one thing for sure is that China and Switzerland are going upstream against the current. In 2013, Switzerland became the first continental European country to have signed a free trade agreement with China, and last year the two countries signed a first-of-its-kind innovative comprehensive partnership. The Chinese president's upcoming visit is set to upgrade relations and business cooperation to a whole new level.
President Xi's visit to Switzerland is sending a very clear message to Europe. No matter how bad the situation Europe is facing right now, China will always be a strong support to maintain the China-Europe ties of prosperity and stability.
China stands ready to carry out more cooperation with Switzerland to embrace the fourth industrial revolution. The two sides are set to open up new areas. Swiss President Luther said they should share more experience as innovative cooperation proceeds.
I think it was a honor also, and that China and Switzerland could sign and enter in a new phase of cooperation. And it shows that we both think innovation is key for the future.
Now China is playing an increasingly active role as a responsive and responsible global economy. The Swiss president said the world needs China's wisdom. Her country looks forward to further cooperating with China with mutual trust.
We will see an increasing potential of cooperation. We are signing some agreements in different areas. I hope that this state visit will increase our cooperation in all these new fields which are important for tomorrow.
Daniel Craig used one in Casino Royale.
Second is...
Javier Bardem used one in No Country for Old Men. A gun silencer. Shooting enthusiasts call it a suppressor. It's an assassin's must-have in movies.
For most people, even gun owners in this country, the only time that they've actually seen a suppressor is in film, through Hollywood.
In real life, it's a heavily regulated gun accessory that Knox Williams says makes shooting safer.
These things reduce the noise of a gunshot. They bring the noise down to safer levels from a hearing conservation perspective.
Williams is president and CEO of the American Suppressors Association, an advocacy group working to make suppressors easier to buy.
We've got a campaign called No State Left Behind, where we're going through and trying to legalize it so that suppressors can be legal for ownership and for hunting in all 50 states.
Now his fight has reached Congress. Representatives Jeff Duncan of South Carolina and John Carter of Texas have introduced what they call the Hearing Protection Act. The goal is to lift the provisions of the National Firearms Act of 1934 placed on the suppressor, a $200 tax and a background check that gun shop owners say could last a year. Gun control advocates say the bill is about militarizing weapons, not about hearing.
It's a complete misunderstanding of the noise levels that unsuppressed firearms have, the risk that both recreational shooters and hunters have to things like tinnitus, which is ringing in your ears, and noise-induced hearing loss as a result of exposure to loud noises.
Opponents say suppressors will allow mass shooters to kill stealthily. To demonstrate the noise reduction, Williams fired rounds from several guns with and without a suppressor. First up, a 9mm without the suppressor. And now with the suppressor. The AR-15 without the suppressor. And now with it. A noticeable difference, but nothing as dramatic as Leonardo DiCaprio's muted rounds in Inception. The 2015 bill failed to change suppressor laws, but Williams and gun rights advocates are optimistic this session. Why?
Second Amendment, 100%. Remember it.
Donald Trump won the presidency.
If we can get the Hearing Protection Act to his desk, we believe that he will sign it. That wasn't the case under the Obama administration.
Donald Trump Jr. told a suppressor manufacturer as much during the campaign.
We want to go through Congress, we want to do it the right way, but if you line up those votes, he's obviously going to be for it. I mean, it wouldn't make sense otherwise. It's about safety. It's about hearing protection. It's a health issue, frankly, for me. Getting little kids into the game, it greatly reduces recall. I mean, it's just a great instrument. There's nothing bad about it at all.
The bill is just days old, and members of Congress are now taking sides. gearing up for what could be the next big gun battle on Capitol Hill.
So you heard there from the proponents of this bill. I spoke earlier with an opponent, the opposition, Lad Everett, who's the director of One Pulse for America. He says this is not about health, it's about money.
I have yet to see any actual evidence of a public health problem, any actual research into hearing problems with gun owners. But last I checked, earplugs are still readily available. Ear muffs are still readily available at shooting ranges. There are a whole range of products to help with noise suppression for shooters. The problem with silencers, particularly in a recreational shooting situation like, let's say, hunting, is you want people in the vicinity of gunfire to be able to hear the report of a firearm. That in itself is a key safety element, because if there are people around you when you're hunting, let's say, you might not be aware of their presence. The report of gunfire allows them either to identify themselves to you or to move safely out of that area if necessary. That's just common sense.
The fleet left Zhenjiang in South China's Guangdong province for an escort mission in the Gulf of Aden in mid-December. The fleet has carried out training in line with the changing situations in the Gulf, including anti-terrorist and anti-piracy trainings and rescue of hijacked ships by force. The 25th Fleet joined the 25th Fourth Fleet in the Gulf of Aden for escort missions on the first day of 2017. The two fleets then started their first joint escorts for a Panamanian ship. It's the Navy's 1,002nd escort task. Chinese fleets have escorted more than 6,000 ships and rescued or aided more than 60 Chinese and foreign ships.